Hey guys, welcome back to the New Earth Project. I'm David Caxero, and today I want to talk about observation, observing yourself, and how this can really help you go through life with more inner peace and more contentment, not so things don't really bother you nearly as much. So if this sounds interesting to you, then stay tuned. I often say that objectivity is a superpower. And the reason I say that is because when you can be objective, when you can just observe something, an emotion, a thought, an experience outside of you, it loses its power over you. And you take your power back. Whatever it is that you're observing, without attachment, without identifying, right? You're just watching it. It has zero power over you. It's separate from you. You're just watching it. And every experience in life can be observed, whether that is a thought, an emotion, someone talking to you, physical pain that you're experiencing, mental or emotional trauma that you've experienced. It can all be observed. And when we do observe it, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden the physical pain just disappears. It just means that you're not as identified with it. And when you're not as identified with it, you start to separate yourself from that. And because of that, it doesn't bother you nearly as much. And that could be for anything. You realize that it's just a passing experience. Here's an analogy for you. If you were to watch, waves crashing onto a beach, when the waves crash onto the beach, is the ground that the waves are crashing onto, is it disturbed in any way? Say there's like a rocky shoreline. Are the rocks disturbed in any way? No, they remain still, regardless of the turbulent waters that are crashing onto them. And I like that analogy because the same is true for us in life. In life we experience these waves of emotion, of positive experiences, of negative experiences, of all of it. And they're just waves that are coming and going in life. And quite often we attach or identify with some of the waves. We become disturbed because of the wave, whatever that temporary experience is. And the truth is that there's an awareness that simply watches all the experiences of whatever this human character that we're playing goes through in life. There's a rock underneath all of the waves of life, if that makes sense. And if we could get in touch with that awareness, the waves of life would come and go still. Positive experiences would come. Maybe negative experiences would come, hard times, good times, the peaks and valleys of life, But in the background is just a peaceful awareness watching it come and go, right? So if we could live from that awareness, things really wouldn't bother you as much. Now, the tough part is that how do we get there, right? And it's a muscle that we can strengthen within ourselves. I really believe that. And so how do we strengthen it? Well, I usually say meditation is a really good way of strengthening it. A lot of it is just expanding your self-awareness around when am I having an emotional reaction? When am I having a thought? And I like to start with really small things. And it's much easier to observe yourself going through a positive experience than a negative experience, right? When you go through a positive experience, something that is really joyful or happy or you're laughing or whatever, you're more at peace, you're more relaxed, right? And in that state, it's easier to observe yourself. Whereas when we're going through a hard experience, something that's really painful, it's more difficult to observe ourselves because we're going through a stress response. We're not thinking about observing ourselves. We're focused on what is causing the stress or how we're, whatever that is, right? So the key is to, I think, strengthen that muscle within yourself. Call it your mindfulness muscle. call it your spiritual muscle. You're strengthening that connection with that awareness, which is your true self. You're observing the character that you're playing. You're observing the play of life. And I like to do that with positive experiences, right? Or the really simple things. In anything that you do, like I said, everything can be experienced. So if you can observe yourself with a positive experience and not attach to it, right? You still enjoy the experience. The positive emotions are still coming up within you, but again, you realize that it's just a wave. It's a wave that's crashing onto the rock. You know, it's maybe more of a pleasant wave in that moment, but it's just a wave. And if we attach to that experience, what's going to happen is that we're going to really, really resist the experiences that we don't want to happen, right? And then we start living life based on our personal preferences, the things that we want or don't want. And life outside of us doesn't always go according to what our personal preferences are, right? So when we live from that personal self, it creates a lot of suffering in life. So the key is to observe the personal self, observe the personal self's reactions, the patterns, the trauma coming up, all of these things. And like I said, the more we strengthen this mindfulness muscle within ourselves, the less things would bother us outside of us. And starting with positive experiences is a really good way of doing that. Meditation, like I said, is a really good way of improving this observation muscle, your ability to observe these things within you, because meditation, it can be really intimidating for a lot of people, I think, because and overwhelming. I know sometimes it has been for me in the past. The thought of meditating is kind of like, hey, well, it can be boring for one, kind of monotonous, kind of like I'm just sitting here like not thinking. And that's not necessarily the case. It's not about not thinking. It's about observing yourself. There's a stream of thoughts, which is your mind, and it's constantly narrating your life experience, right? And it's not about stopping the thoughts. It's not about trying to stop the thoughts. It's about watching the stream of thoughts, being the awareness, realizing you are the awareness behind the stream of thoughts. Because that stream of thoughts is an experience just like someone coming to talk to you on the street, right? And one thought comes and goes. It's like cars driving by on the road. The thoughts are just coming and going. And if we could observe the thoughts rather than chasing after them by identifying with them or attaching to them or fueling them by acting from these compulsive thoughts, or compulsively acting from these thoughts, I should say, they would lose their power over us. And by observing the mind automatically comes back into balance within itself. The thoughts automatically will quiet down on their own, because you're strengthening the awareness, which is just the quiet, observing, ever-present space that is always there, right? You're strengthening that over the incessant chatter of the mind. So if we can live from this awareness in everything that we do, and meditation is a good way of practicing. I like to meditate when I wake up in the morning. And it's kind of like the gym for your mind or your soul, right? We go to the gym to strengthen our physical muscles. We can do the same thing for our mindfulness, or our, strengthening this ability to observe things within us. And the more that we could do that, like I said, the less things outside of us would bother us, because we realize that we're that rock underneath the waves that are crashing onto it, and we can remain undisturbed, just like that rock, right? So it's kind of just something I wanted to discuss today, because I know that in my life that this ability to observe things has really helped me stay grounded, stay more content, regardless of what happens outside of me. Positive or negative experiences. It's just my own personal mind that assigns the positive or negative meaning to the experiences. And if I could just watch myself doing that, it doesn't really matter what happens outside of me. I enjoy the positive experiences, and then the things that are painful or hard, they come, but they go, just like the waves. And I guess another analogy would be, imagine a palm tree in the wind, right? And if you put a palm tree in a hurricane, it doesn't typically snap, right? Because it bends with the wind, it goes with the flow, right? But if you were to put something that is much more, it doesn't bend as well. It's more rigid, right? Like say an oak tree or something like that. I don't know my trees very well, but let's say an oak tree. You put an oak tree in a hurricane, it's probably going to snap because it's a lot more rigid in life, in that storm. And we're no different. We can go through life as an oak tree and be really rigid, really stuck in our ways, our preferences, our should and should nots, right? Or we can learn to let go of those things, or just observe those things, which is kind of a way of letting go, and watch them and just allow life to happen and flow with it, you know, like the palm tree. You could experience a lot more contentment, stable contentment in life. It wouldn't be predicated on the things that you want to happen outside of you to bring contentment. You could be content regardless of what happens, and you wouldn't snap in the storm of life when things get really hard. So just something I wanted to share with you guys today, about observing yourself and strengthening that mindfulness muscle within, because I think it's maybe one of the most powerful muscles that we could strengthen within ourselves. Like I said, objectivity is a superpower. I really believe that. So I hope this helps. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you for the next one.